I'll hold mine up in front of my camera here. I've got it.
All right. I think we're live now. Episode 9, This Life in Tech. My name's Jason. My co-host is...
Dan. And today we have...
What? What kind of fucking...
That's all I'm doing. Hey, people already know who I am.
Wow.
You're still trying to figure you out. Well, I mean, you could be, what's his name, Uncle what?
Not
Uncle Julio?
Everyone knows who you are, Dan. Some people might be tuning in because they are just such big fans of me and Tarah.
Yes.
And they don't know who you are.
And our special
this is
guest
true.
today.
And that goes to, I'll introduce our first special guest. She is most popular for blocking me at least 2 times on Twitter.
This is a great way to get Twitter fans. It's highly recommended. It's a career advancer. Everything's very awkward with Dan. I regret it. Yep. I'm sorry, Dan. Look, I'm apologizing publicly.
Well,
sorry, Dan.
He also goes by the hashtag #TeaCupLadyBoss, which was done by our other special guest, Miss Tarah.
It was a real
y'all just jealous because I can eat whatever I want and I'm not 100 pounds.
Well, you know, Elissa, to be fair, I think you owe me an apology because every time you block Dan, he fucking texts me and complains.
Really?
Somehow I'm his dear Abby, you know?
I don't recall doing that, but I could have been drunk.
I'm pretty sure I only blocked Dan once, and then I learned my lesson. Is there some second time that I don't remember? Did I drunk block you, Dan?
You might have. It's very, very possible that you did. It wouldn't be the first time.
Drunk blocking. I've been awake for 17 minutes. Don't make me hashtag things in my head yet, please. I beg you.
Tarah,
Coffee's coming.
Right now.
Oh, that's great.
We're not meta enough.
Not meta
enough.
So
let's talk about Tarah's book. I'm very excited because my book's been out for a while, and that's been cool. But Tarah's book is just out now, and it was my first blurb. So I'm very proud of myself for Tarah's book.
Yes, let's talk about it. I think it's a great idea.
If you want to give me 1 second, I'll turn video on here.
Sweet.
Got a little bit of an echo going on here.
Yeah, whose speakers
Do we
is
still?
that? No, it's gone.
Not mine. So while all this is going on, I guess while Tara's getting her video done, so we could probably go and talk to the first one. Oh, there she is.
We turn a light on.
Sweet.
We've got. I apologize that I don't yet have Tara's book in person. I just had an electronic copy so far because it just came out. There we go, Women Tech. But Elissa, being the editor for Lean Out, the struggle for gender equality in tech and startup culture, edited by Miss Elissa Shevinsky.
Thank you.
On the back of my book. That's why we're really all here today, so you can see the back cover. Which is, oh my God, she sent it to me, and she's like, I said all these really nice things about you, and I said, thank you, E, and she's like, yeah, it took me forever to make them all up.
I didn't say it quite like that. What I said was that I took my time, that I was thoughtful, that I put time into it because it mattered. I actually sat and read part of the book. Later you were like, did you read all the book? I was like, I didn't read all the book.
This gets into really good. This top part right here, I wonder how long it took her to write this, that I was her favorite CSO.
Go Vlack.
But I'm just kind of curious as to how many CSOs she really knows. I might be the only one, so it was by default.
That was my immediate question.
So, Elissa, I know you're kind of short on time and stature.
Well,
not on capacity.
I have more.
But never capacity, but not capacity.
I have high capacity. Very high functioning, short person.
Yeah, she's big on the internet. So, Elissa, tell us a little bit about your book. Why did you want to get these? I will say, group of people together to come up. I don't know what the right term is in terms of within the number of I'll say individual authors that you had, but what was the thought behind it? What's been the reaction to industry, friends, colleagues, frenemies, enemies?
The frenemies have been they get a little bit jealous, but in general the response has been kind of wonderful. I started this book because I thought that these stories really needed to be told, and at the time that I'd started Lean Out, the quality of journalism about women in tech was just really poor. I found myself being interviewed for stories where the journalist just wanted to attach a quote to someone. I wasn't actually being asked to tell my story. I was being asked to kind of fill in. I was like a placeholder in other people's stories that they were writing. And I thought that that was unfortunate. I thought that women in tech should have a way to share what they're experiencing and have that be unedited and raw and not filtered through a media organization that had its own agenda. So I worked with Or Books, and my editor was just amazing. He was like, Elissa, it doesn't matter if the stories aren't quite perfect, as long as they're raw, as long as like they're real. And so Or Books was all on board with this idea of telling these stories in this very authentic way. And I think that I succeeded in doing that, and that's why people like Lean Out so much. They read the book and they feel like less alone, which is remarkable, right? Like there are women who are working in the tech industry in Kansas and in Oregon and in places where there isn't a strong community around like being a geek girl. And they're reading Lean Out and they're feeling less alone. And that's really motivational for me. It makes me want to go and do the next one.
Well, you know, I think that's an important concept to talk about and actualize in a way. That there's tons of research and science to substantiate that we as individuals like to be around groups that emulate us, right? So you're going to naturally gravitate towards a social situation that looks like you, acts like you, has your values and morals, so forth and so on. And if these voices don't get out and they're not, I think marginalization is one potential problem, but the other problem is how it's run through, and you kind of indicated this, through a filter that changes the voice to a different narrative. So the story becomes irrelevant. It's a soundbite that's put into a completely different context, which perpetuates this attractor that's not the attractor of where it came from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And there was a very serious problem to me in the way that my story was being told, where journalists really wanted to position me as a victim. And they really wanted me to tell my victim story. Like, you know, show on the doll where your co-founder hurt you. And that just wasn't my experience. That wasn't how I felt about myself. I'd never felt like a person who had been disempowered. I felt strong, and I felt like I was achieving my goals, and I was excited about that. And so part of the problem with the way that the media had been telling women's stories is they weren't highlighting like how cool and how strong these women were. They were trying to tell stories about them as victims. And in Lean Out, yeah,
I was going to say,
do.
Elissa, I want to jump in just to support you, especially on that notion that journalists often want women to tell their victim stories. I get pushed indelicately to talk about acts of violence that men have committed towards me, the problems I've experienced and stuff like that. And I am constantly trying to track it back onto a positive angle. But Elissa's right. There's not just a victim kind of narrative happening, but it is actively being contributed to by a number of journalists who just want to know all of the nasty stuff they can put in a headline. It's true. Exactly what she's saying. Go on, Elissa.
Well,
Yeah, it comes back down if it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah. It's just not the stories that women necessarily want to tell about themselves. So Lean Out was cool because they're the stories really unedited, told from all these different people in tech. And I think you really see the diversity there. You see that people's stories are very different. Their experiences are really different. And so almost anyone who picks up Lean Out can relate to some piece of it. And that happened because I didn't really have a dog in that fight. Like, I wasn't trying to tell a specific story. I was surprised at how Lean Out turned out. I wanted Lean Out to be more warm and fuzzy and positive. But I tried to solicit those stories and people just didn't have them. So the book turned out the way it did because people were in a lot of pain and they had to talk about that.
I didn't get a negative vibe from your book at all. I mean, I felt there was both just real stories that occurred, some, I would say, some suggestions to people in business, and it was just real. I mean, I didn't feel it was negative at all.
Yeah, well, I'm a very like happy, optimistic person, actually.
Really annoyingly so. Yeah.
It's true, right? Tarah, tell them how annoying I am.
She is so annoying.
Oh, I know.
The reason Elissa and I really kind of know each other is we sort of kind of hit a little bit of Twitter frenemy status a year or two ago, and then we started talking with one another and really enjoying, you know, the conversations. But the truth is that she and I are, I think, we have a very, very unique experience of both having put together and written for, but also edited multiple famous female technologists into a book. And some of the stories about just the creation of the process no one would ever get other than Elissa. And it often leads to us sitting on the floor of her Silicon Valley apartment with like 5 in a row, like bottles of white wine that are different. And by the end of the night, we just don't even pretend anymore that we're not going to put them, like dump them all in the same bottle and drink from it, because it's so crazy. And the thing that inspires me about Elissa is that she manages to stay so positive all the way through it. She's got this kind of crazed energy that makes her able to tackle things just extraordinary to me. And I will say right now, she is certainly one of my personal heroes. She's inspired me on a personal level to, you know, go for the things that I want, to be able to ask for some of the things that I want. And that's very difficult sometimes for women to do at almost any level. So she's my hero.
Thank you.
So did you two collaborate on your books together? And I ask this because they're very similar in themes, especially with some of the advice.
Some of the advice from some of the authors is probably going to be the same. They're actually 2 really different books. She's a post analysis, and I'm marketed towards high school girls.
Well, I just meant in terms of the advice.
Oh, yeah.
I think we didn't know each other that well when we were putting our books together. I barely knew you at all, Tarah, when I was doing Lean Out. Yeah. And actually, I barely knew anyone. That was like a hibernation period for me, where I barely left the house. So there was not a lot of outside influence on Lean Out outside of my editor. And with Tarah's book, Tarah had been very warm and reached out to me about potentially being involved, and I just didn't have the emotional bandwidth. But that gesture made me want to really be friends.
Will you be my
also,
friend?
I was afraid of Tarah. I was afraid of Tarah. This is like really,
well,
we have to
I can imagine why.
this.
She threatens people a lot. I mean, I was one of the victims of her threats.
Well, Tarah and I occupy kind of a similar space, and that's why we can be like so close. Like, Tarah is easily my best friend now in the entire world. Like, and no one's even close to that. And so much of that is how similar our experiences are. But if we didn't get along, like, this could get bad real fast.
The West Coast is mine.
No.
You can have the West Coast.
Here. I have built my blanket fort here in Soma, and you cannot take that from me.
I know people.
There's 4 of us on this hangout, and 2 of us are in California. I think we have it.
I agree. Right, because you all are there to try to improve the worst coast. The best coast is already the best for a reason. You're all just trying to bring up the worst side.
We're indubitably in the best state in the union.
I'm in Seattle. Where are you, Jason?
In LA.
Oh, you're in LA. Okay.
San Diego. He's in San Diego.
So, he's got a.
That was a joke. Yes, that was a joke.
Well, how
So,
acceptable you are.
yeah. So, Alyssa, one of the things you wrote. So, I've read your book probably now twice, but I paid a little bit more attention to your section here, especially since you were going to be on the one that you wrote. And I would say you I don't know if the right word, but it kind of insinuate that you think it's tech companies that should change their practices in hiring, but at the same time, like I've had many job postings, I don't get a lot of women that even apply for the jobs. So what would you say in terms of hiring practices? I mean, especially Silent Circle is, I would say, women friendly. To hire there. I mean, John Callis is quite well known. Tarah, you were working there for a little while in the beginning, which is where you and I officially met.
I did some systems.
But I put job postings out there a lot.
Yeah.
Right. But I just don't see, even throughout my entire career and hiring, I just don't get a lot of women that apply for the positions. So what do you think
about this a lot.
Tech companies could do for that?
Yeah, I think about this a lot, and I'm also following what the larger companies are doing, and they've established like new job positions that weren't there back when I was more actively looking at working at places like Google and Facebook. So Google and Facebook both have new job positions open for someone to come in and create a job pipeline for more diverse candidates. So when I wrote this book, when I initially wrote that chapter, Google was saying that it's a pipeline problem. Like Susan Wojcicki from YouTube was saying that people are not there to be hired. And then Lean Out came out and was part of this broader movement saying the pipeline.
Did we lose her?
I think we did.
So that dialogue has shifted, and now companies like Google are saying there are women of color, there are people who are different from the folks who are already here, and we have to figure out where they are and how to reach them.
Well, to me that makes sense. To set the premise, there's a piece of science. A dude named Fisher studied population balance and parity, and what he came up with is called the Fisher constant. And what it says is, left to its own devices, human populations will hover somewhere close to 50-50 male-female. That's parity. So when you look at STEM in general, technology specifically, the last research that came out in the last few years still says it's about 80-20, right? 80 male, 20% female. And when you step back and you look at the disproportionate ratio between what should be at balance, right? And that means no outside influence, no selective pressures, right? And then you look at what's actually true, 80-20, there's clearly something going on. I don't know if anybody really knows what all those things are, and they're probably a lot of different things combined, but the fact that you can categorize it as a pipeline problem completely makes sense given the science.
Well, what we could do is go back to somebody who's already been mentioned in the call, in this call, John Callis, who has in a previous video cast that I did maybe a year or so ago to help women and minorities propose to speak at DEF CON. We had a conversation there about how, what does this pipeline problem mean? I think a lot of women at the senior level of technology will agree that it's a pipeline problem, but they don't mean the same thing that other people do. It's not that little girls aren't interested in technology. It's not that middle schoolers aren't programming. It's that at every point along the pipeline, we leak women at a rate twice that we do men along the way. So it's not as if it's 80-20 starting from the beginning. It's much closer to 50-50 in computer classes, in middle school, grade school, high school. Then it starts to change. Because at every step along the way, women feel less and less and less welcome. Fewer and fewer opportunities are open for them. So at the top end of the problem, what we have often is a combination of not enough women to apply for the positions to give you that 50-50 ratio, and most certainly, the gender gap in pay makes a huge difference. Women often move over when they find the huge imbalance in pay between them and their colleagues to a field where there's some form of guarantee, like healthcare or something like that, where they'll know that they've got guaranteed pay rates. Government is extraordinarily close to 50-50 in technology because everybody knows what everybody else is getting paid. There's no negotiating. And one of the things we discussed about in that chat was this. if a system if you're operating in a system in technology where there are very few women at the top, where they're being paid 80% of what the men are being paid, and a woman comes to you and you try to hire her and she doesn't negotiate, and somehow magically, even though it's not really your fault, she ends up with 80% pay of what the men on her team with the same titles are being paid. It may not matter that the tactics that you used were equal and fair, that you used the same tactics for negotiations, for hiring, you use the same language that you use for everyone else. If what you have is a system that, regardless of lack of bias that you can find, is indistinguishable externally from a sexist system, does it really matter? Ultimately, the outcome is what matters here, which is why people keep thinking that they can go to the root cause without trying to fix the problem at the other end. The leaks in the pipeline is the pipeline problem, not the
exactly. The bias is inculcated into the framework of the pipeline itself as it exists right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned about the aspect for salary negotiation. So I tend to not negotiate salaries at all. This is what I can pay, and that's it. It's kind of funny. Jason and I have a mutual friend that was going to come work, wanted to come work for me. We had gone through the doctorate program together. He lived in San Diego at the time, and he kept trying to negotiate with me what he was going to get. And I said, look, dude, you're worth $115. That's all I'm willing to pay. That's it. And on the contrary, I had a former student of mine that was more, we'll say, closer to a mid-level, and she had come in and said, okay, I said, well, what do you want? What is it you're looking to make? And she'd come in significantly lower than what I was looking to pay. And I'd said, no, look, sorry, we'll just say student, I was going to pay this, so this is what I'm going to pay. Same thing. I feel a position's worth X amount of money. To me, it doesn't matter man, woman, ethnicity, sexual orientation. This is what the job is worth to me, not necessarily the person that's in there. So I chose I just wasn't going to negotiate salary. This is what the position is worth. Maybe that's because I spent all those years in government. I don't know.
I'd be very interested to see what would happen if instead of that negotiating, if someone like you, if you already know what you're going to pay for the position because that's what the job's worth, I think you'd be very interested to find out what would happen if you just posted what the salary for that was going to be. Just
the thing is men will negotiate. The thing is men will negotiate more than women. And I agree with Tarah's point that we say that the system isn't biased because we put everybody through the same system, but what we have in business is a system that was designed by men for men, and now women are coming in. And what's cool about companies deciding that they want women and people of color is that companies now have to shift and change and adapt to be more friendly for these new groups that are coming in. And if we see that a system favors men over other people, if we all agree that we want a more even distribution of people in these companies.
She must be on her iPhone.
Change. What'd you say?
you keep going in and out sometimes. I think you must be on your iPhone.
Oh no, I'm on the Wi-Fi.
Real phone.
Actually, I should jump off because I have to get back to my other work.
The day job.
Indeed.
Well, thanks for joining us, Elissa.
Oh, thank you so much
Definitely
for having
appreciate
me,
it.
and Tarah.
Yeah. I'm totally texting you because I have so much stuff for you don't even know.
I don't even know.
Wait for the wicker storm coming all up in your direction in a little bit. Oh my God.
And then, Jason, I apologize for all my past crimes, and I pre-apologize for the ones about to happen.
No, you should apologize for not committing crime with me.
Now you're leaving me.
I'm here in San Francisco.
Well, Elissa,
come on anytime.
Your apologies are always accepted. They're just never forget what the circumstances of what you committed were.
Wow.
Thank you.
Bye, Elissa.
Bye, Elissa.
Bye.
Thank you.
So
We're left with the lovely Tarah,
It makes sense what you guys are saying.
and we're still outmanned.
I find it very interesting to hear this from. I find it interesting to hear this from a female perspective. I've done a non-trivial amount of academic publishing, but I've focused on the cognitive constructs of gender, not the morphology. And it's not that they're different, but they manifest in different ways, right? And what you guys are saying in your books and in the presentations you've done and you're doing right now, if we look at how that bias is substantiated in these frameworks that exist, like Elissa said, it was created by men for men, and it hasn't adapted or evolved because there's no selective pressure yet, although I feel like it's building up because of these conversations. It matches up with what we see in the cognitive constructs, and that transcends your physical sex. There's potentially people out there that are minorities in different ways cognitively that are being unnecessarily excluded from the process for the very same reasons. And that's a disservice to the field in general, in my opinion, because what we need are more humans.
It's true. So I actually happen to have done graduate work in cognitive behavioral theory too. I was over in prospect theory with Tversky and Kahneman and their Nobel Prize winning work in the 70s and 80s. And the work that I was doing had a great deal to do with leadership behavior under conditions of ethnic conflict, which it's not a terrible analog to the situation that we find ourselves in right now. And one of the most important things that I learned when doing that work was that people's framing of everything matters. Framing effects on how we pose problems often can probabilistically, to an 80-90% degree probability, predict the outcome of the question or the problem or the algorithm. So when we end up in a situation where the frame to should we hire more women and minorities is do we have to lower the bar to add more women and minorities, and that is irrevocably tied to looking around a room and seeing women and minorities in it and saying, I wonder how far they had to lower the bar to get them all in here. The frame for that is the expectation that white, male, straight is the default, and that to vary from that center right there is to create a deviant firm in some fashion, one that literally deviates from the norm. So the framing effect that we have for women and minorities is, I would say, a huge and very unspoken part of why we see people at a top level not wanting, because there's so much pressure to hire good people, not wanting to lower the bar, be seen as lowering the bar. In a lot of ways, hiring white, straight, male is like buying IBM. Nobody ever got fired for it, right?
Right. Right. Well, and it also explains the effect of why those individuals for so long inside of the system don't see the problem. Well, because they're incapable of, because it's built closer to their frame of reference. So it's more normative to them.
Yeah. Well, I'm a giant nerd, so I end up talking about this stuff because I was a social scientist. I mean, this entire thing right here, it comes out of the fact that I'm actually a political economist. So by academic training, I was just collecting data, and then after a while, I was like, well, I've got anecdata, and then after a while, I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I've got a sample size here. So when I realized I had a sample size, I said it's probably time to get that work out there. So in manner more of a social scientist, I just wanted to collect as many, stories and concepts as I could. And so my life's a little different now that I've done this book. I'm going to be frank with you. As an entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur, I have zillions of ideas and I throw them out there, and success in one often leads to success in other areas. And this book is more successful than I thought it was going to be. So almost in a way, I'm like, damn, I don't have time to pay attention to all that right at the moment. I'm trying to run a company, which is maybe the highest class problem any author ever had, especially for this notion. But
sure,
it was important to do it. It was important to get information out there. And Elissa told me, and several people told me that the salary negotiation thing was the thing they flipped to first, which is really interesting. Yesterday I had 2 emails come from women who told me I had published an essay on the topic, and some of that material's in here too, but 2 of the people who just were in the acknowledgments that I sent out like a previous PDF of the book to emailed me and told me that they had $10,000 a year more in their salary package because they had read that and used the techniques there and were totally stunned by it.
Good.
So, and it was just a matter of saying no to the first offer. Yeah. So
Right.
the problem, Dan, is that most people are not like you. Most places are simply trying to maximize dollars and minimize costs.
Clearly.
And women let themselves be minimized more than men do because there's a high economic cost to not being liked, higher than the missing amount of your salary. The high cost of not being liked is not getting the job to begin with. So,
Yeah, well, and
Sure,
there's
sure.
there's an
So,
intrinsic difference in perception, just based on the gender construct cognitively, right? I mean, men tend to favor zero-sum games, whereas female cognitive constructs don't. And salary negotiation is something that's viewed very much like a zero-sum game.
I wouldn't know that I would argue male and female on that. I will argue that there's certainly a masculinized and feminized version of how people approach things. I tend to more be in the social construct realm, which is that masculinity and femininity are practices, and that I happened to end up happily enough in a body that matched my preferences, which is great. Got a lot of friends who are trans, but I watch with fascination and hopefully a great deal of support as I see people navigate between these identities that are very, very socially constructed and very reinforced on an everyday basis. And I don't have to feel a lot of that because I both am and present as female. Or maybe a better way to put it would be feminine. So, but I find the constructs themselves very interesting. I'm less worried about the neurotypicality of the situation. I am concerned that that to be a tomboy is a compliment, but to be a don't be a baby, don't be a girl is a negative.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we need to not just kind of qualitatively determine that one gender is more desirable than the other for a set of traits that is irrelevant to whether or not you can write good goddamn code.
Right. I agree.
yeah. So someone has has to deal with people in data. The first part of your book chapter I went to was directly the advice to men, because I wanted to kind of see, okay, is this going to be a man bashing? Yes, I went right to the advice to men as it, going, all right, let's see if Tarah's going to go to where I didn't think that you were, and went to the man bashing aspect, and it was not like that at all. I actually I enjoyed it. I've only finished about half the book, but that was the first chapter I went to. Was the all right? Let's see let's see. Is Tarah going to take what I would say is the stereotypical approach, or at least the bad side of feminism, I would say. And it wasn't like that at all. I think it wasn't even just, I would say advice to men. It was advice to people who want to be leaders of people. And I took a look at, well, what am I doing with my team? So not only was it, like the one part that I really took away was, so I have a team that is made up of African American, I've got some women, and I've got some men, and I've got some of the guys that work for me were also military. And so I've been, take a look. The example you put in there was everyone's going to go out for pizza and beers, and the makeup was something like 3 men, 3 white men, an Asian man, an Asian woman, and I think maybe another woman was in there or something like that. And the first time you all go out, everyone shows up. But then that dwindles very quickly because only the white guys show up, which is stereotypical, out for pizza and beers. But you forgot that the Asian persons might be lactose intolerant, so doesn't want to eat pizza because of cheese. Women tend to have to take care of not just family at home, of like maybe their own children, but maybe elderly family members. And that if you're looking to build a good team environment, do things that the team wants to do, not just something that you're looking to do. And I took into that. I thought that was really good advice, for sure. That you have to take a look at the whole team environment, not just a small subsection.
The effect of eating food together is a really big bonding one.
There we go.
Yeah, the effect of eating food together is a really important one, and you'll forgive the pun, but I like to not just complain, but bring something to the table. So the idea here is there's no point in screaming at people if you can't provide a better solution. And this is one of the solutions that I've seen people and I've personally used and come up with to get people all together. Sometimes you do a potluck at the office. Sometimes you go out to a different restaurant. It's one of the better companies I'd seen that wanted to do like a Friday brunch. They rotated to different all-you-can-eat buffets because everyone can find something to eat in an all-you-can-eat buffet. And there's great ones here in Seattle. So you can go to the Asian buffet and the Italian buffet. There's lots of different options for people that way. And so food is really important. We spend a lot of our time with the people that we work with, and we eat with them. And yeah, it's kind of tough because that happy hour afterwards, that's when you get to know somebody and decide that you want to work with them long term.
Yeah, well, it goes back to a very basic tribal construct that builds those social ties, right? We're wired to sit around a campfire, eat together, and share stories. And when you aren't having a campfire situation, if you follow, that is inclusive, it's by proxy or direct effect exclusive. And those people aren't going to bond into the team framework.
Frankie jumped up on my chair.
Oh,
and
hi,
decided
Frankie.
to come over and say hi. This is Frankie.
Nice.
Hi, Frankie.
Mm-hmm. His name is Frankie Fangs. Oh, ow, that's my leg.
So we had
that's my leg.
3
Ow,
guests.
ow,
Look at
ow,
that.
ow, ow,
Frankie
ow,
Fangs. Nice.
Ow, that's my leg.
Oh, that's great.
It was fun because one
so
of
the other part that I
really, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, so the other part. Okay, the other part that I found that chapter, which was also really good just for a minute, and I bet you RSA, the company, wished they had read something like this before they decided to have lingerie models just walking around their booth several years ago, in that you're going to have a lot of people in industry. And I remember, when reading this, and I didn't, thinking back now, some of the times when I'm doing consulting work with the federal government, specifically with the military, and we would have account managers that were women, and then all of a sudden, the military people want to go to a strip club. And I started thinking back, how is this comfortable for you? I mean, how is this, business? Like, I mean, why should we be doing business in a place like this? And think back to RSA several years ago. This is certainly not the way I want to deal with business. How does this still going on? Why is it still going on?
Last year at DEF CON, and I think I mentioned this in the book. I won't give the company name, but I was at a party where it was the industry party for this large cybersecurity company, and all of the movers and shakers got their invitation in their special ninja bus over there, and there was a big situation. And the entertainment was 2 strippers on poles in one of the rooms. And I don't know but what happens when that happens is that there becomes this expectation that all of the women in the room are there as entertainment, because what would women be doing in a room where there are strippers? And I reached over and just kind of had a chat with one of the gentlemen who was in charge of the purchasing for a very large contract with this company, and noted that I and many other female entrepreneurs might feel less than comfortable patronizing a company that used women as decoration. And this was one of those times when there was no real reason to throw a fit on the internet, because that was going to solve the problem fast. And given that the RSA Booth Babe scandal happened years ago, and this happened only just last year at DEF CON, there's no critical mass of people who have figured out in business that this is inappropriate. That's what's really worrisome. That in this day and age, it keeps happening. That no one just knows that it might be a bad idea to try to decorate your parties with naked chicks. And that's what's truly concerning here. There can be scandal after scandal, and yet it keeps happening because no one's noticing or caring. So
well, it tells you how powerful that fabric of the status quo
narrative.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, look, I'm not a prude, and I fucking love women, but that shit's uncomfortable. If I want to go see tits, I'll go see tits. I don't want to. Right? I mean, but
this is the Libertarian podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But it's an adult choice, right?
Oh, sure.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Go play World of Warcraft. Listen to the songs. The internet's for porn. We know this.
Right. But to be forced into that social situation, it's like the conversation about dinner or lunch or whatever, right? It's actually
force me into that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's uncomfortable for anybody that is not part of the status quo.
Yeah, it is. Well, and that's the problem, that you're defining the status quo as straight white male.
Exactly.
Maybe just stop defining it that way. See what happens. Define it in an opposite fashion.
Right. That's why I tend to try and push for a higher abstraction to look at it as a species, and let's just talk about being human. There's things that unite us across all the barriers, and if we focus on those things as much as possible, right, it's much more inclusive by default instead of having that very specific normative story of white male default.
like Cheez-Its. I mean, I feel like we as an entire race can all deeply bond over the fact that Cheez-Its are awesome. No one doesn't like Cheez-Its. They're the
Yeah.
greatest thing ever, right?
Right.
I have never
Right.
met a human being that doesn't like Cheez-Its, and if I did, I would be like, shut your mouth. Wait, open it up. Here it is. Isn't it good? They're like, oh,
That's a better test for replicant.
oh, I know. My eyes. Eat the Cheez-Its.
Nice.
I'm fucking
Right.
hungry now.
Nice.
It might be
I
the
will
munchies.
tell you,
but
gentlemen, I've got about 2 more minutes before
Yeah.
I've got to get going. If I could, just for 1 second, for anybody who's listening right at the moment, just to let you know, because my publisher wants me to do this, the book comes out on March 29th. If you want to head to Amazon and just search for Women in Tech, and you'll see something that looks vaguely like that. And very importantly, note that Elissa's blurb is right there on the back cover. Very important. Comes out March 29th. Pre-ordered it on Amazon because that's the best place to go get it right now, I think. Also, for those of you in Seattle and certainly around the world, on March 29th, we will be doing the big ass launch event here in town. Most of the authors, including Brianna Wu, Kristen Toast Smith, Camila Taylor, Maya Johnson might make it, Angie Chang will be on stage, and Step 2, Stephen Toulouse, former bandhammer of Xbox, he's now director of hacker success over at HackerOne, is going to be moderating the panel. We might have a couple extra special guests too, so real big blast. Go take a look. I would love to have you there. It's going to be kind of a raucous crowd, I have the feeling. So thank you so very much, and I can answer one last question for you if you want.
I just have a recommendation for everybody. 50 milligrams of a nice sativa strain, a glass of scotch, and that book. Expand your mind.
Absolutely. You know, I have a lot of respect for both. I have a lot of respect for both Elissa and Tarah, both as just humans and people that know technology quite well. I won't even bring up gender. They are just quality human beings, which is great. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be friends. Well, they have to. I mean, I'm probably the weakest of all of their friends in terms of my crudeness and ability to troll.
I don't know. You look pretty great in that tux on your Twitter profile. You're okay. It was wonderful to meet you, Jason. Thank you so very much. I've had a
It's all a
lovely
facade.
time.
Thank you, Tara. My pleasure.
Yes. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, gentlemen.
Great.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Tarah. You too. Bye-bye. All right. Time for our 5 minutes of snake oil. Let's bring on Death Star.
Oh, my fucking God.
Hopefully
dude.
he's still paying attention. He better be awake.
Text me, chat me that motherfucker's email, man, that he wants the invite on.
It's probably still that.
Yeah,
that
don't.
stupid.
I don't know if he wants it given out, man. Don't read it. Just why are you doing that, man?
No,
I'll tell
I'm
you
not
what.
reading
Dude.
it. I'm not reading it.
There you go. Thank you. Why I'm pasting this in and getting this fucker on here. I got to tell you, man. I've tried to talk to a lot of people about this stuff, and at least in the academic circle, because it's predominantly white male as well. People don't want to fucking talk about it, man. They want to act like it doesn't happen. What they want to do is acknowledge that it's a problem.
Don't.
They want to acknowledge it's a problem to the point of getting grant funding, and then they fucking forget. And nobody wants to talk about what's a human problem, what's a species problem. It really irritates me, man. Where is this motherfucker?
Yeah, and both Elissa and Tarah, I think, do a really good job in their books about it's talking about it. This is a human problem. They're not bringing up the victim, which is I think is always great, because it's very easy for anyone to take the victim side of things, but these are two very strong humans. Period.
Well, what I like is
I've worked with Tarah. I'm on one of Elissa's boards.
What I like, man, is their approach to it is measured. It's balanced and it's fair, and that's how you rebalance a lack of parity. Is you have to find out where those frameworks and references are, and just work to eliminate what's tipping that scale out of balance. I sent the invite to that fucker. We'll see how long it takes him to show up. But yeah, man, and that's easy to listen to.
Here he comes. Look at that.
You got to unmute yourself. There
they
you
were
go.
great.
I don't want to unmute myself.
Big thanks to Elizabeth and Tara, the Red Queen. And now we go to Death Star and our 5 minutes of snake oil. So, did your proper attire come in yet there, Death Star?
No, it's in the order of snail mail. However, it will be coming, I hope, by next week.
Hope.
Got it. So, great. So, yeah, exactly. So, we're getting ready now for our 5 minutes of snake oil. So, this week, we had Death Star, a.k.a. Brandon, take a look at one of the companies that happened to be at RSA, trying to convince me how great their stuff works in all environments, Mac and Windows. So this week, Death Star takes the snake oil challenge with this company ESET, and on a Mac. Brandon, what do you got, man? What's going on with it?
So I decided to go for their biggest, baddest version of their Cybersecurity Pro software for OS X. With a name like Pro in it, you'd assume it was, top tier epic shit. And the weird thing about this is Apple verifies a great deal of its own software through the App Store. They even charge a bit of a premium for some apps that you can otherwise get for free on developer websites. So you would assume that software that has a good reputation would be on their App Store, correct? That's a fair assumption to make?
I think so.
Reasonable assumption.
You search for ESET on the App Store, nothing populates at all, even on the most updated version of OS X 11.3. So that right there, to me, is a bit of a concern. I have no verification from the operating system that I'm using that they have acknowledged this to be software that I can trust. So right then and there, if you want to put any trust in Apple, which I don't recommend, they alone don't recognize this software.
So did you actually have to lower your security settings in order to install ESET?
I did.
Did Apple at least recognize that it was... Oh, you had to lower your security settings to install ESET.
I had to go into the actual settings itself and I had to install this unverified developer on my, granted it was a test environment, but still. The fact of the matter is that you have to lower your security settings to install.
No, but that's an important step.
It is, and I mean I understand in order to install third-party applications it is necessary, but for something like this it shouldn't be a requirement. It should just instantly go, hey, here I am, let's get ready to rock. So, let's see here. This security suite offered a plethora of things. One, it was supposed to give actual no-shit malware protection. Are you guys familiar with the malware for OS X known as MacKeeper?
Yes.
Formerly Bitdefender, MacDefender, whatever the hell it was. So I wonder if I can actually share my screen here. Am I able to do that? I know I could before.
Oh boy.
No, I can't. So I took a bunch of screenshots, which I'm probably going to end up uploading to Imager or something later on. One of the things that...
And we'll post that stuff up on the website.
Yeah. So one of the things that it had claimed that it could do was to actively seek out and destroy malware like any antivirus program would. Here's the thing. When it popped up, after ESET was properly installed and I went through everything that they gave, I went ahead and intentionally installed MacKeeper on my test environment. And when that was successfully installed, I went to open it up, and ESET had popped up and said, hey, we've detected this malicious software. As it was detecting the malicious software, MacKeeper started popping up more and more things for me to install, special offers and things like that to get further rooted into my system. I shit you not. So it gave the option to either clean, delete.
I don't have two of them.
To clean, delete, or to just completely cancel and let it do its thing. So I decided to hit the clean button because any of your average person out there who would download this antivirus stuff, well, yeah, delete's going to just pop it off your system, but clean is supposed to protect me and get rid of all the nasty crap that it's done, and I don't know anything of anything. So help me out, antivirus. Now, your typical Mac user that's going to be over the age of 50 has no idea how to use their operating system, right?
Wow, that's a bold fucking statement, man.
Well, think about your grandparents. You know, they wouldn't know how to do this. So in my opinion, they would pick the clean button. And I went and clicked it, and lo and behold, more of the MacKeeper software kept popping up after I had clicked dismiss and clean and get rid of all the crap. I even have a screenshot of the MacKeeper icon up in the status bar sitting right next to the ESET software. I shit you not. They're sitting side by side next to the time and date.
Well, birds of a feather flock together. They're both fucking malwares, apparently.
So one of the other features that it offered was child locks, parental software. That's supposed to be a huge thing. Now, you have 3 different tiers. Parent, i.e. you, the administrator. Teenager, which is obviously a little bit more relaxed than you would have brick shithouse. And then third is the kid software, which is supposed to be completely locked the fuck down. You can't even access search engines off of this. So, using Safari, the integrated web browser into OS X that comes pre-installed, all that jazz, I was still able to access, with its default search capabilities, not actually accessing Google.com, to utilize Google's translate capability to act as a proxy to bypass the security check that it had to go ahead and access porn. So kids can still go and see.
So you're telling me it doesn't recognize Google Safe Search?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't recognize any capabilities of Google whatsoever. It doesn't recognize different domains or subdomains. So if you went to google.eu or .co.uk or whatever the hell it is for a different country, you could still access the crap that you're not supposed to be able to access. I'm not going to give the exact domain that I used to access the porn, but I've got a screenshot of even ads with Adult Friend Finder on it. So, it's inside of Google Translate with this software running.
Wow.
Well, and that's some shit like in the early 2000s we community-wise, that's what I mean by we, came up with to beat WebSense.
Yeah. It's
use a fucking translator.
Yeah.
Crazy shit that it still works even in this.
Safe Search it's a checkbox in WebSense to block the Safe Search.
Yeah.
To enable the Google Safe Search. Wow.
So effectively, for the OS X side, the software is shit.
Sounds like complete fucking snake oil.
Right?
Yep. It definitely sounds like snake oil to me. Wow. So on Mac, to recap, you have to lower your security settings and basically recognize that ESET is not an authorized developer for Apple products. Then it doesn't recognize known malware like MacKeeper. And then it doesn't allow you still, even as a child, with their parental features, it still allows you to look at adult materials. It doesn't look at Google Safe Search, go to different domains in order to do things. That's pretty much a recap. There are 3 things they say they just don't do.
Yep.
Well done, man. Well done.
Wow. That was great. So that's probably took a little longer than 5 minutes of snake oil, but we've got that much fucking snake oil to clean off. It takes a little bit longer than 5 minutes sometimes. And that was just the Mac version. So next week we'll have the Windows version. Yeah. So next week we'll have the Windows version. And hit us up if you want the Death Star to come circle a particular technology you think is snake oil. If you want to see the sites, there ain't no farm boy around here. This is not for any farm boys coming near this Death Star. They're protected by true Sith masters. Hit us up. 5 minutes of snake oil.
Watch out.
Hashtag that shit out. We will take a look. Yep. We'll take a look. We will take a look, and we will tell you if it's snake oil or not. There's probably products out there that we'll look at, and it won't be snake oil. It'll live up to their claims.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, man. You know, there's a lot of, especially small startups that aren't necessarily security focused, and because they're entrepreneur, they're not focused on having that talent at the beginning and getting shit running. Listen, man, we can check shit out for you. We'll give you the truth. We're not going to bullshit you. If you're interested in using something, you don't know how it works, send one of us a DM or an email. Hit us up. We'll bring you on and show you how it works.
There's a particular piece of software that I have in mind that I would love to try within the next couple weeks.
And that would be...
You've got to get a hold of it first, and I know which one it is. You've got to get a hold of it.
I'll keep talking to the individual, but I really, really want it. If somebody has it and wants to send me a copy of it,
I know.
I'll pay them. I'll
You
give them
gotta
money
tell us
for
what
it.
the fuck it is first.
It's Zips from Zimperium.
Oh.
I really want to touch it really badly, very inappropriately.
Jesus Christ. Fuck, man, that got dark
I'm
quick.
not going there.
That got dark quick. I don't know what the fuck you're doing, man.
Nice.
I enjoy my job. What can I say, man? I mean, this is great for me. I love this.
Good. Right on, man.
Yeah.
Good work.
Awesome. Well, there's our 5 minutes of snake oil with Death Star, a.k.a. Shadow DXS on Twitter. You can hit me at NetSecrex, The Real J. Pittman. Another thanks to our guests, Elissa and Tarah. I think that, to me, they're true definition, of what I would say is feminist, strong humans.
Yeah, man. Those are two.
Equality.
Those are 2 human beings that I want on the space ark when we get the fuck out of the solar system.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. I was watching the podcast the entire time.
Oh, that's the one viewer we had.
Sorry,
everybody. All right, everybody. That's it for this episode.
Nice.
Episode
Hey,
9.
episode 9 in the bag.
Woo!
Go buy those books, you fucks. Read them. Expand your minds. And hit us up if you want to know something.
Bye.
Later, everybody.